Hello and welcome. While not specifically an event, Avengers Disassembled is arguably the beginning of modern Marvel Comics and their editorial approach to their comic book universe. Without this storyline, House of M, the first event miniseries in a series of ongoing events, wouldn't exist. It also somewhat sets the pattern that subsequent events would follow, although House of M would refine and expand on that pattern. Obviously, from this point forward, there is nothing but spoilers. Proceed with caution. There is a backstory that's important to know, although the backstory is explained in the final part of the Disassembled arc. It's the twist the entire series hangs on. The important beats to know are that the Vision and Scarlet Witch become involved, and they were eventually married in 1975. Despite Vision being a synthetic, Wanda gets pregnant and gives birth to twins, Thomas and William, in 1986. 3 years later, in Avengers West Coast, these children were wiped from continuity. The explanation being, Wanda conjured these children using chaos magic, and they weren't in fact real. Avengers Disassembled, canonically subtitled Chaos, opens with the corpse of Jack of Hearts returning to explode. This explosion destroys Avengers Mansion and kills Scott Lang. Shortly thereafter, Tony Stark goes on a drunken rant in front of the United Nations. Then the Vision shows up and releases 5 Ultrons. She-Hulk goes into rampage mode and tears Vision in two. Finally, the Kree attack. Basically, it's the worst day in the history of the Avengers. It's a random series of events that are as confusing to the audience as it is to the heroes involved. It is, as the subtitle suggests, utter chaos. On that level, the story succeeds. There is a distinct 9/11 vibe to the proceedings. There's destruction, death, and confusion about exactly what's going on and why. This connection may not have been overtly intentional, but it seems, at the very least, to exist in the subtext of the material. The story arc concludes with the discovery that Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch, has become unbalanced, and her reality-shaping powers have caused all of these attacks. The largest, most obvious weakness to the story is the conclusion. Doctor Strange arrives like a magical deus ex machina and tells everyone what has just occurred. He explains the mystery. There's no discovery whatsoever, and no investigation to confirm his story. He's merely taken at his word, despite the accusation that one of their own has become unbalanced and possibly evil. It's a sudden, shock revelation that takes the entire final issue to reveal. Literally, the entire final part of the story is Doctor Strange telling everyone everything. In essence, Doctor Strange is the writer's avatar in that issue. That is, this scene requires the character to have all the knowledge one can't organically arrive at through the course of prior events. So in essence, Doctor Strange inserts himself in place of the writer to give the characters an explanation. Certainly, Strange is a trusted source by the other characters, so his explanation isn't challenged beyond a reasonable doubt. In a very existential manner, the characters trust the unknown writer of their adventures like they trust Doctor Strange. Yeah, that's getting into bizarre, overly metaphysical territory, far too metaphysical for a Marvel comic book, but the basic argument stands. Without Doctor Strange, this information cannot be organically determined. Following this explanation, Magneto appears and everyone, practically every superhero in the Marvel Universe, allows this questionable character to take his daughter away, even though she's an unbalanced, extremely powerful being that has just caused immeasurable damage. It's a baffling ending that only makes sense because it occurs in an ongoing monthly series. Even though the Avengers title ended with that issue, one could reasonably presume this dangling thread would be explored when the title was rebooted, so its lack of resolution could be overlooked. Or, at the very least, it could be easily justified in the moment. An ongoing plot is, after all, a standard element of continuing superhero adventures. The end to the Avengers accomplished a few things. For one, it made the Avengers a cornerstone title in the Marvel Universe. Prior to this, the Avengers was at the bottom of the top 25 titles in sales. That's not terrible, but not great either. Through the course of Disassembled, the series would enter the top 10 and its sales would double. Following the title's relaunch at the beginning of 2005, as the New Avengers, the sales actually tripled, and the title remained in the top 5 for the next 5 years. Just as important, Disassembled laid out the foundation, or pattern, all other events would follow in the years to come. The two significant elements are, the story pits heroes against other heroes. Usually, but not always, this includes the death of a Z-tier character or characters to galvanize the factions involved in the conflict. Most notably, the story is incomplete. There is no definitive resolution. This shouldn't be misconstrued as there not being a conclusion of some variety. In Disassembled, the cause of the worst day in Avengers history is discovered, but the consequences and implications of this cause are not addressed whatsoever. Therefore, this is not a complete story. It is establishing the premise for another story. As a storyteller, one wants a premise that is a springboard to other stories. I mean, that just makes sense. As previously noted, these are ongoing adventures. A writer isn't going to shut down all plots all at once, nor are they going to avoid exploring all threads that arise from that premise once it's established. That's basic serialized storytelling in a nutshell. Again, within a continuing, self-contained series, this approach is accepted by the audience. We expect there will be a series of conclusions over time that will, preferably, lead to a final resolution. That is the unspoken pact between the audience and the creative talent. In other words, Disassembled establishes a problem that is not solved during the story. All we get is the origin of that problem. That is the issue present in nearly all forthcoming Marvel events. Each subsequent Marvel event merely establishes a premise to be explored until the next event arrives. As such, each event feels incomplete because the actual conclusion, the sense of finality, doesn't exist. Contained within one title, this is to be expected. However, when expanded to the entire line of Marvel Comics, this becomes a problem. This approach will lead to the effect known as event fatigue. There will be an accumulation of dangling plot threads and no sense of closure. And it all begins here, with Avengers Disassembled. Until next time.